Hello, everyone. In this lecture, we're going to talk about common components and utilities in Bootstrap. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's talk about what that is. So in order to introduce this concept, it's going to be in your Bootstrap section, 2.4 common components and utilities. So this is what we're going to be working with. So Bootstrap comes with a bunch of pre-built, pre-styled elements called components. I can explain what those are by showing an example real quick. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll show an example. I'll call this 19.4. Common components.html. Okay, so let's get the boilerplate here and let's link up some Bootstrap using the Bootstrap site right here. Get bootstrap.com, copy the CDN link and paste it here. Okay, cool. So there are common components and utilities. What do I mean by that? Well, let's look at an example where we may have an element that could be styled in multiple different ways. For example, I'm going to go ahead and open this in Live Server. Let's say I have a div here. It just says, I don't know, 1 here or something. Okay, I'll give it some classes. Let's give it some font color. So we can give it some font color, some background color. Background is BG. And if you ever forget, you can always go on the Bootstrap site, search, make sure you're in the right documentation though. So mine is 5.3 here. So I'm going to use 5.3 documentation here. And I will search up background color, right? And then I can do BG primary, for example. BG primary. That's going to give a blue background color. And then for font color, I'll just do search for colors. Basically, you just search up the CSS property that you would want on the search, and it'll show you the Bootstrap equivalent. So maybe I want some, if I have a blue background, let's go ahead and do white font. So text light. And let's give a border. And yeah, let's just see what that looks like. Right. So we were able to style this up so that now there's blue background, white text, and some border. Let's make the border a little bit bigger. Border 2. You can see a thicker border. And yeah, I mean, we can even give it some padding. Padding on all 4 sides will just be P, and then dash some number. So yeah, padding on all sides. Let's do P3 actually. Cool. So I was able to do something like this with this div, right? I combined several different styles. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 styles, 5 different classes that I applied into this div to make this appearance. Well, what a component is basically just something that comes with a combination of styles already. So we can actually use a component to create something similar to this. Let's take a look at components here. I go here to Bootstrap, and then I will search up. Yeah, here's the component section. Let's take a look at something like an alert. What is an alert, right? Alert is something like that looks like this. It already comes with some background and font color. And here's some different types of alert. Primary alert, secondary, right? And it gives you the code for it. So alert, primary. What does that look like? Let's go ahead and create a div with the class of alert. And does it have another class? Yes, it does. Alert primary. If you want to add another class, you can just do dot alert primary and then press tab. It'll autocomplete for you. Let's have to say the number 2. Let's take a look at what this does. Look at that. Isn't that cool? We can actually have the same type of format, almost the same. I guess the borders are more curvy on the alerts. And instead of having to use each individual class to come up with a combination of styles for something, there's something called component classes that come with a combination of styles. So it looks like alerts come with some background color, font color, some border, and also some border radius, right? How would you do border radius without this component class? I would have to search border, and then let's take a look at border radius. Border width, border radius, right? You could do rounded. So class is rounded. Okay. Right, so I could achieve something similar to the top box in the bottom box using component classes instead. So what is a component class? It's just a class that comes with a combination of styles. So you don't have to put every single piece of the combination manually. You could just give a component class and it'll come with a certain amount of combinations. Now, if you want something outside of this pre-built combinations, you might want to use your own set of combination, like we did in the line 10. But if you like what the alert looks like, you can just use alert class instead of having to type all that extra code. So that's what a common component might be. And there's other common components in Bootstrap. There's alerts, there's buttons. Buttons also come with some styles. Like if I create a button that says, click me, right? I can give it some class. Well, by default, a button is going to look like this, right? But if I give it the class of, let's take a look. It's I already have it memorized. It's just class button, but just want to show you how I would go about it. I would go here, components, and here's the button component. Now I could individually style the button with the background color, font color, border radius, or I could just use the button class. Okay, it's BTN. And then BTN primary gives us the blue button with white text. Right? So I could just do this and I get a button that looks like this. Or if you didn't want to use the component class, you'd have to come up with every piece of style yourself. Like, what would I have to do to the second button in order to make it look like this button? What I would need to do a background primary to make it blue. I would need to give it some padding. Maybe that might be too much. I would need to give a rounded, I need to give a border. And then rounded border. And then font color white, so text light. And I think the padding on I think padding could be a little bit bigger. Right, I would have to do something like this in order to come up with the same type of style. So would you rather do this or just use the component class? Most people would rather use the component class. So that's what a component is in Bootstrap. It's just a combination of different styles to use in a more convenient manner. And there's some other ones available as well. A card, what is a card? Let's take a look at cards. Let's go here and look at the card. A card is some content container that have many different options. So you can have a card with some content inside of it. And a card is basically just a container that comes with some padding already. Now you could just create a container and then add padding manually, or you could use the card, which has padding, has a rounded border, has a border, right? It has a combination of different styles. So let's take a look at a card, for example. Div.card. And then inside of a card, you're going to need a card body. So div.card body. And I'll just have some text that says, hello there, right? So what is a card? It's just basically a container that will have some padding and a border and a rounded border at that. You could totally recreate this yourself without using the component class. I could just create a div that says hello there as well, but I would have to manually tell it to have the border and have it have a rounded border and then have some padding to do the same thing. Now, would you rather do this or just use a card? You know, it's up to you, really. There's no right or wrong answer, but some people prefer to just use a component class. So that's what we're talking about with common components and utilities. And yeah, we talked about text earlier. You can also center text inside of an element using text center. There's some other things you can also do. Right? There's borders, there's text stuff that you could do, aligning the text to be centered inside of its container. Let's take a look at an example of that. If I want hello there, I could say text center, and it'll center the text. Text right. Okay, that didn't do anything. Text, there's one for text not centered to go to the right. What is it? Well, let's take a look at documentation here. Bootstrap text. So text start, center, and end. That'll work. And you can also make it responsive for SM, LG, XL. So I could say in general, just have it be text centered, but for large devices, text LG be in the start. Look what happens here now. Now for we're talking about the second box right here. If I have it for large devices, it's going to be start. That large devices is 992 and up, right? At 992 and up, it's a text. It uses this code instead. For large devices, it'll do text start, but for everything else, it'll do text center. So if I make it smaller, now it's text center. This will be activated, right? And the breakpoint numbers are going to be in this doc that you'll find in the grid section that talks about the responsive breakpoints somewhere over here. Yeah, these ones right here. Cool. What else do we need to know from this section? Let's go ahead and go to Common Components Utilities. We talked about borders and colors already. Cool. We talked about margin and padding. You can also do flexbox. So let's talk about how to do flex. So let's go ahead and create a situation. I'll just go ahead and create an H2 here. Flex example below. Let's say I have a div. And I'll give it a border. And then I'll make the border thicker. And I'll have this div be here. So you can see this div. I'll just have it say 1 for now. Cool. You see this div here. And let's say it has some children. Like it has some paragraph tags. Let's do 3 paragraph tags. P times 3. Let's say 1, 2, and 3. And I'll give these paragraph tags a border as well. Or I'll just give it background color. BG primary. BG secondary. And then BG danger, right? Now, we could use the column way to put things side by side. If I wanted to make these 3 paragraph tags be 3 columns side by side, I would need to make this container a row. And then that will accomplish the feature of me being able to do columns. And we talked about that earlier. So you could totally do that to make things side by side. But you can also use Flexbox. You can also use Flex with Bootstrap. So how can we do that? We don't need to do the row column thing anymore. Just think about your Flexbox rules. If I want these 3 paragraph tags to be side by side, what do I need to flex? I need to flex their parents. And the class name to say display flex is just dflex. And it now flexes them in flex direction row. How did I come up with that? Well, I just had it memorized, but if you needed to, you would just search flex. And then you'll just see, yeah, dflex is to display flex, to make it a flex container. And then you can also be responsive. So, you know, if you want it to be flexed or not, depending on different device sizes, you could. So if I only want it to be flex on small devices, I'll say, or a large device, I'll say DLG flex. and it'll only flex on large devices. Watch this. Right now, this is not considered large, but when it gets to 992, it's flexed. You see that? So this will only apply in large devices. Cool. Cool. So that's good to know. And what else can we do? Let's take a look with Flexbox. So we can do align items. And if I want, you see there's a bunch of space available. If I want these columns to equally share the space available, that's the flex property, not the display flex, but just flex property on the children, flex items. I can say flex 1. Actually, I forgot how to do that. Let's figure it out. Oh, you could also do flex row and flex column, right? Justify content. Let's do justify content real quick before we do the sizing of the flex items. Justify content, is this going to be justify? And then, you know, I could do center, start, space between, space around, space evenly. These are different options. And let's see what happens when I save this. Yeah, centered or justify content between means space between. So you could totally do something like that. What else can we do? Align items, that's to align them on the y-axis in this case. You can totally do that too. Okay, and we also have the flex grow and flex shrink property. So yeah, we'll just use flex grow for now. Flex grow means if there's more space available in the container, how do we want the children to take it up? So if I do flex grow 1 here, this one is going to take up all the remaining available space. But if I give them all flex grow 1, then they're going to all share the remaining available space equally. If I wanted to put a gap in between, I think it's there's a gap property. Gap flex bootstrap. Yeah, I forgot the syntax for gap. Is it just gap? I forgot. I think I could just do gap 1, maybe, to give a gap between each item, each flex item. Oh yeah, that works. Okay, I just guessed that and it works. Okay, great. So yeah, you could do things like that. You could totally do Flexbox. Cool. And so that's Flexbox. So let's go ahead and put all this into tests. I'm going to go over the solution for this assessment. Please try this first and then only watch the solution once you have tried hard enough. So let's go ahead and take a look at this assessment here. Continue with assessment. Web preview. Okay, this one actually looks like the web preview actually works. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna go ahead and type directly on this. There's the HTML file. And then no, not instructions. I want the web preview here. Okay, great. I'll make this full screen. And we'll just go with this one. So what do we need to do? We need to actually start coding inside of the body. And we need to start looking at the instructions here. Okay. So we need to build out something like this. It's not going to be responsive, so it's just going to be for one device size, or it's going to be for. It's not going to be responsive to different device sizes. So immediately when you think about this, you want to think about the layout. If you see multiple columns, you got to ask yourself, where are the columns? And where can we have a row, right? So here's a column on the left and a column on the right. 2 columns. And in order to have columns, you need to put them inside of a row. So I would basically represent this as a row here. This whole thing would be a row. And then this would be a column on the left. And this is a column on the right. You see that? So I need a container for the 2 columns. That'll be a row. And if a row has 12 imaginary lines, right? If a row, each row has its own 12, each row is divided into 12 equal pieces. Of those 12 equal pieces, how many pieces is this left column taking up out of 12 versus the right column? Would you say the right column is taking up more pieces than the left? I would say so too, definitely. I would say the right column is taking up more than 50% of the column. So if there's 12 columns in this row, the left column, right? If there's 12 imaginary columns in this row, the left column is taking up probably like 3, and this right column is probably taking up like 9. That would equal up to 12, but you also got to account for this margin here. So I would probably say this is taking up about 8, and then this is taking up the rest with some margin. So we can go ahead and build out something like this. Let me clear my drawing, my annotation, and let's go ahead and do that. I'll have the instructions here as well. So we can just go ahead and do something like that. Okay. Cool. So I'll get rid of this H2. I'll create a div. Honestly, I don't like typing here. I don't like typing here at all. So I'm just going to copy all this. And I'll paste it here. Create a new file. 19.4 assessment.html. And I'll just paste all this. And just keep in mind, this one's using Bootstrap version 5 now. So, okay, we're going to have to use Bootstrap 5 in our documentation. I'll just go ahead and split screen this. And let's take a look at the instructions. So the mockup looks like this. I'll just get rid of. Okay, so this is what we want, and we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to create a container for before we do anything. Let's just create a main element, and it's going to have a class of container. This is best practice so that your elements don't touch the edges of the screen window. And then let's think about having a row here, just like we talked about. We want a row that's going to be this whole box so that we can have 2 columns in it, the left column and then the right column. Okay, so let's set that up. We're going to have a div.row, and I'll just give a border too, .border, and I'll make the border thick enough to see, border -1, and press tab. And I'll just have it say 1 for now. Let's just see what that looks like. This is not the page. Let me go ahead and open in live server. Cool. Yeah, so this is just the drawing of my stuff right here. But yeah, here's that div. Here's the div with the number 1. Okay, cool. And in that row, right, I need 2 columns. So I'll have div.col times 2. So it'll create 2 columns. I'll call it left and right. Cool. So we got the left and right columns. Let's give them some border. I like to give borders in the beginning so I can see what's going on. So it looks like left and right are taking up equal sizes, but we don't want equal sizes, right? If this row was imaginarily divided into 12 pieces, how many pieces would the left side take? I would say col dash maybe 3. Cool. And then I would let the right take up the rest, but we want some margin for the left side. We could do a left margin, left column's margin on the right side. So this left column, margin on the right side. Now in Bootstrap version 5 and above, it's going to be, for margin on the right, it's going to be ME. If you have Bootstrap version 4 or less than version 5, it's going to be MR for right. R for right and L for left. But in 5 and above, it's going to be S and E. S for start, which is going to be left, and E for end, which is going to be right. So ME, let's do like 3. Cool. So we got this spacing here accomplished. We accomplished that. Perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and clear my drawings here. And let's go back to seeing what we need to see for this assessment. Cool. On the left column, we need to do some stuff. And on the right column, we need to put some stuff as well. In the left column, we can see that there's the 3 boxes. I can label them as, well, let's take a look at what they look like. Cool. Okay. So there's just some boxes here that have some padding and a white color. Okay. I can create a div for that. So I need 3 boxes. So I do div times 3. Let's give them some class though. Let's give them some border. And they all have padding. So P3, I'll just give P3 padding. And then text light for white text. Oh, they all don't have text light though. The other two have dark text. So let's do P3 and press tab. And this one will say American Black Bear. Now let's copy this. This is going to be text light, BG primary. So white text, blue background color. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, I put it on the wrong column though. I meant to put these 3, not here, but in the left column. Cool. Okay. Great. So this is what we have so far. And then these second 2, we're going to need to, let's think about what else we need. It looks like the border is rounded on the top only. You see for the American Black Bear, it's only rounded border on the top left and top right. So how can we accomplish that? I'll just search border here. Border radius. And if I want only on the top left and top right, it'll be the second example here, which is rounded top. So I'll give that here, rounded top to the American Black Bear, which should give us, cool, rounded on top. And for the last box, I would want probably rounded bottom. So that it has rounded border only on the bottom, because that's what it says here. Perfect. And this one will say sloth bear. And this one will say sun bear. And cool. So we got this already. And I can get rid of this border on the left column now. I can get rid of the border on the left column. Just get rid of that. And there we go. We have this layout achieved. Let's get rid of the border on the row as well. We don't need it. I just use those borders as a starting point. So yeah, we have this set up now. Perfect. And then what else do we need? We need on the right column, we need 2 boxes, one here and then another here, right? So I'll say div times 2, oops, times 2, press tab. And in the first div, it'll have the posts Okay, it'll have a background color and a border as well. And is the border rounded? Let's see. Yeah, rounded border. Okay. So we can think of something that comes with a rounded border and some padding already. Like we can put those individual styles by themselves, but we could also use a component class. So I just wanted to show you also that you could use a component class like an alert that already comes with some padding and rounded border. But what color? Let's take a look at alerts. Alerts, that's a component. So yeah, I would probably just go to the alert, the component section here, click on alerts. Probably want something like this, the second one, right? So that would be alert secondary. So I'll just type this for the class name. And I'll just have it say 1 for now inside the div. Cool. So that automatically gives us the rounded with padding and background color as well. Isn't that great? So that helps. Instead of us having to type those individual styles one by one like we did earlier, you can use a component class. Cool. Okay. And then it should what should be here? It should say posts and American Black Bear. Now here we have it looks like we have a paragraph tag that says posts and American Black Bear. Right? But the problem is posts is styled differently than American Black Bear. So how can we fix that? Right? We got to have posts be a different color. If you wanted some inline styling within a paragraph tag, you can wrap it into something called a span. I can wrap posts in a span. By the way, you can just drag and drop an element wherever you want like this. And now I can individually style the word post to be slightly different. And to make it a blue font color, it's going to be text primary. And then, yeah, there you go. We have that. Now, I will say this. I think the alert might have too much padding. So maybe I wouldn't do the utility class. Maybe I'll just, put the border, background color, or I could overwrite the padding and say P2. Perfect. Okay. And a paragraph tag also comes with some padding already, or, things like that. So I'll just do class P0 to get rid of any padding that paragraph tags come with, and margins that paragraph tags come with. I'll get rid of that, because some elements come with their own padding and margin. And there you go. We got this part right here. And the next div is going to be this div right here with the American Black Bear. It's going to be pretty similar. It's going to have, in this div, we're actually going to have two divs, 1, 2. So I'll have a, or I could just put it all in one, or not all. I could put, so yeah, I could actually think of this as a div, and this is the div as well. Or I could just put it at the top like this. But there's something better. There's something called a card that I can use to make something like this, where you have a div that has some padding, and the top part of the div has a different style, right? That would be a good use case for a card. So instead of using a div, I'll just use a common component called it. Well, it's still gonna be a div, but I'll call it a card. Card. So that's a common component as well. If I search for a card, this is what a card looks like. So card can have, yeah, you could do list groups like this too. We could have probably done this for, you could have just done this for the left column with the bears, right? Could have done that as well. Oh, wow, you could do a featured one. Pretty cool, right? You could do all this other stuff. So, but let's do something like this. We probably want something more like this with a header and a footer, right? So we will just do this. We'll just copy this and just replace this with that. And we got something like this. Look at that. So what does that mean? It should just say American black bear here. And then some stuff about American black bears. I don't need an H5. I can comment this out. The card text is going to say, yeah, some stuff about black bears. I'll just type in lorem and press tab. It'll just auto-complete some filler text. And then here's a button. I don't want it to be blue though. For yellow, it's warning. And it'll say go to source. And there you have it. We have built this out. Oh yeah, and fun fact, I don't need this border around the right column anymore. So I'll just get rid of this border. And also another fun fact, what we did earlier, we on the left column, we did it, with individual styles, one by one for each one of these, right? We could totally do that, or I could comment it out and I could show you a better option. Let me put a border here on the right column again so you can see the order. Okay. As we saw with the cards, you may have seen something that might help. Something like this, but with the featured, right? Like this, right? So maybe we would do that. And just paste it here. And then, yeah, there you go. But that's a little bit too big. Oh, the width is set manually here. Let me get rid of that. Set width. Cool. So now it fits here. And featured is going to be this one, card header. Let's give it a background color of primary. And then text light. But other than that, we're good now. Now we just have to put the names of the bears here. Featured is the American black bear, so I'll just say American black bear. And then we have what? The sloth bear and the sun bear. Sloth bear, sun bear, and we don't have anyone else at the end, so I'll get rid of this. And there you go. You could do the same thing. And let me get rid of the border on the column. There you go. You could do the same thing using a component class, or you could do individual styling. And there, I've shown an example of both. And there you go. That should be good enough for this assessment. Hope you guys have a good one. Bye-bye.